5 Have a Wonderful Time by Enid Blyton. The famous 5 had been lent 2 funny old-fashioned caravans with high wheels and steps up to the front door. They were in a sloping field below an ancient ruined castle perched up on high, where its great walls and crumbling towers still defied the winds and gales that blew over the hills. It was called Fay Knight's Castle, and a very steep pathway led up to a great wrought-iron gateway which screened its entry. The only way to get into the castle ruins was through a turnstile at a narrow door by a small tower. George and Timmy the dog had arrived at the field a couple of days after the others, because George had been off for a fortnight with a very bad April cold. She and Timmy were given a very big welcome when they arrived to join the others at the village station, and they all became more and more excited as they walked up the grassy hillside to the field where the caravans were. Once there, they stopped at the gateway.
Oh, are those our caravans? Aren't they lovely?
Yes, the red caravan is ours and the blue one is yours and Anne's. Oh, sorry, yours too, Timmy.
They're old travellers' caravans made up to date. Some school friends lent them to us. Jolly comfortable too. Bunks that fold against the wall, a little sink for washing up, a larder, cupboard, shelves. Come on, we'll show you.
Come and see our caravan first, George. I'll open it up for you. There, what do you think? Oh, it's lovely, isn't it? And so tidy. But there won't be much room for Timmy on my bunk at night, will there? Oh, Timmy can sleep on the floor on a rug. There. You see? He wouldn't dream of doing such a thing. He always sleeps on my feet.
Oh, Timmy will be all right. Come outside, everyone. It's a lovely day.
I like the look of Fay Knight's castle. Can we go up soon and explore it?
Yes, of course we can. It only costs 5 pence to get in. But if it's a nice day today, we could go for a walk this afternoon to the sea. It's not very far from here. Dick, may I see the paper you bought in the village? I'd like to look at the weather forecast.
Yes, here it is. By the way, there's a bit more in there about those 2 vanished scientists. It's quite interesting. Listen. Terry Kane and Geoffrey Pottersham have been missing for 2 days. They were last seen together walking to an underground station. Since then, they have not been seen. It has, however, been established that Terry Kane has purchased tickets for flying to Paris. No news on his arrival there has been reported.
I'm jolly glad I'm not at home today. If they've gone off to tell their secrets to another country, Father will be rampaging around like anything, telling Mother what he thinks about fellow scientists who are traitors.
Didn't Uncle Quentin work with Terry Kane at one time, George?
Yes, he did. He quite liked him too, I think. But never mind about all that. Let's think about dinner. What have we got, Anne?
Fried sausages and onions, potatoes, tin of sliced peaches and custard.
I'll fry the sausages. We'll go and light the fire now.
The first day that they were all together was a lovely one, and they enjoyed it thoroughly. In the afternoon, they went for a walk near the sea, and Timmy tore after imaginary rabbits until he lay panting like a steam engine with his long pink tongue hanging out of his mouth. They bought lots of food from a friendly farmer's wife, and when they climbed over the stile at the bottom of the caravan field, the sun was going down. The evening star twinkled brightly in the sky as they trudged up to their caravans. Julian stopped and pointed.
Look, more caravans have arrived. They're rather like ours. They must be the fair folk that woman in the village told us were coming.
Good. We like fair folk, don't we, Timmy?
We will have exciting neighbours, won't we? But they're very quiet at the moment. All the doors and windows are shut. Most peculiar.
Look under that caravan over there. There's a big box with holes punched along the side. Let's go and have a look at it. Come on.
Stop it, Timmy! Stop it! Julian, come and help me. There's something in the box that Timmy's never met before. Help me drag him away. Come on.
Hey, take that dog away. What do you mean, poking into my business? Upsetting my snakes?
Snakes? Oh, George, it's snakes in there. Do get Timmy away.
Get that dog away from my snakes! Go on, get out of the way before I do something. Go on!
Sorry. Come back, Timmy. Please stop shouting, or my dog will go for you.
Go for me? He will go for me? You keep a dangerous dog like that which smells out my snakes and says it will go for me? You wait till I let out my snakes, then your dog will run and run and run, or else he'll get a loving squeeze from one of them.
With an enormous heave, Julian and Dick and George got Timmy under control and dragged him up the steps of Anne's caravan and shut the door on him. Anne tried to quieten him down while the other three went back to the little snake man. He had opened the box, and a great head had reared out and swung itself from side to side. 2 dark eyes gleamed, then a long body writhed out and slid up the man's legs, about his waist and round his neck. It was a python. George shivered, and Julian and Dick watched in amazement, while Anne and Timmy, watching from the caravan, were hardly able to believe their eyes. In fact, Timmy didn't like the look of this new creature at all, and hid under the table. The man took out another snake, and talking in a low, caressing voice, finally put them both back in their box again, shut the lid and locked it. Then he turned to the children.
Now, you keep away, do you hear? I do not like dogs or children, nor do my snakes. So keep away. I'm going back into my caravan now, so clear off.
We seem to have got off to a bad start with these fair folk.
I'd never seen such monsters. They were pythons. We shall have to keep out of his way. But he really seemed to love his snakes, didn't he?
He certainly did. I wonder who lives in the other caravans. I feel I daren't even look in case they contain gorillas or elephants.
Don't be an idiot, Julian. Oh, look at that caravan over there. The one with Mr. India Rubber painted on the side.
The driver looks a bit long and thin and droopy. If he's Mr. Indian Rubber Man, he hasn't got much bounce in him.
Mr. India Rubber Man walked over to another caravan with the word Buffalo written on the side. The door opened, and a huge young man with a mop of yellow hair, red face, and a big smile looked out. He greeted the India Rubber Man and told him that some food was waiting for him, and Mr. India Rubber Man walked slowly up the caravan steps. The famous 5 went into their own caravan, had supper, and talked about the strange new arrivals. They were sorry they'd got off to such a bad start with the snake man, but after eating some jolly good sandwiches and plenty of pickled onions, the boys said goodnight and went off to their caravan, while George and Anne both got into their bunks and settled down for the night. Timmy tried the floor and didn't like it, so managed to curl himself up on George's bunk, give a heavy sigh, and fall asleep. The next morning they were up bright and early, and were soon sitting around a small fire, from which came a nice smell of bacon and eggs and fresh tea.
I say, a lot more caravans arrived during the night. Look, that one over there has got Alfredo the Fire Eater written on it.
I imagine him to be a big fierce chap. I expect he's got a terrible temper and an enormous voice.
There's someone coming out of his caravan now.
It's a woman, his wife, I expect. How tiny she is. Rather sweet. She looks Spanish.
And there's the Fire Eater, just like you imagined him to be, Dick. Really big and fierce.
Just my idea of a fire eater. Hello, what's happening? His wife has just pushed him out of the door.
Pushed the Fire Eater?
Yes, listen. She's telling him off for burning the breakfast. She's threatening him with the saucepan.
Seems odd, a fire eater to burn something he's cooking. On second thoughts, though, perhaps not.
Poor old Fredo. He looks as brave as a lion, but seems as timid as a mouse, really. There's someone else walking over there like a cat or a tiger, all slinky.
That must be the man who can set himself free from ropes. He's coming over here.
No kids allowed here.
Sorry, but we're caravanners too. Are you the man who can undo ropes when he's tied up?
Could be. Like me to tie you up? You start interfering with us, and I will.
What a nice, pleasant lot they are. Quite different from the other circus folk we've known. We shan't make friends here as fast as we'd thought, that's for sure.
The famous five sat on the steps of their red caravan and looked around the field. The snake man had his pythons wrapped round him, and it looked as though he was polishing them. Then from the caravan marked buffalo, the big red-faced man stepped out, swinging a great whip in his hand. He stood and whipped it through the air with a tremendous crack, making the famous five nearly jump out of their skins. Then Buffalo whistled, and a small, plump woman came out of the caravan holding a cigarette between her finger and thumb. Buffalo swung his whip, and the cigarette disappeared as if by magic. Then Buffalo looked across and saw the children watching him.
You clear out. No kids allowed. Clear out or I'll crack my whip and take the top ears off your head.
It's our field as much as yours. We've got caravans here, but we want to be friendly. We shan't do any harm or make a nuisance of ourselves.
Don't let's argue about it. They seem to resent us, though goodness knows why. Let's go to the village and buy some food for a picnic, and go for a walk by the sea.
In the village, they bought hard-boiled eggs, bread, fresh lettuce, tomatoes, and plenty of lemonade. Dick went to the post office to buy a newspaper, and also found there was a letter there for George from her mother. Then they set off for a lovely walk down violet-studded lanes and over a heathery common, and finally reached a little jetty by the sea. There was a big notice saying boats for hire. After a lovely picnic, they lay back in the sun, and Timmy went to sleep.
Very nice indeed. A jolly good picnic. What did Aunt Fanny have to say to you in her letter, George?
It's to us all. I'll read it out to you. Dear George, Anne and Julian and Dick, I hope George arrives safely, and am writing to remind her that it's her grandmother's birthday on Saturday, and not to forget to write to her. George, your father's much upset to read about those two missing scientists. He knows Derek Terry Kane very well, and worked with him for some time, and is absolutely sure he isn't a traitor to his country. He thinks that he and Geoffrey Pottersham are probably miles away by now, in a country that will force them to give up their secrets. It's just as well you went off today, because your father is striding about banging every door he comes to. Bless him. Have a good time, all of you, and don't forget to write to your grandmother, George, your loving mother and Aunt Fanny.
Funny business about these scientists, isn't it? After all, Terry Kane had planned to leave the country, so although your father believes in him, George, it honestly looks a bit fishy, doesn't it?
Anything new in the papers about it, I wonder? Let's have a look. Yes, here we are. Missing scientist. It is now certain that Geoffrey Pottersham was in the pay of a country unfriendly to us, and was planning to join Terry Kane on his journey abroad. Nothing has been heard of the two men since their disappearance.
That rather settles it then. Two really bad eggs. Look, here are their photographs.
I should have thought anyone would recognise Terry Kane. Those big, thick, arched eyebrows don't look real.
He can shave them off and look completely different. Probably stick them on his lip upside down and use them for moustaches.
Don't be silly, Dick. The other fellow is very ordinary looking, isn't he?
That's enough about missing scientists. Let's clear up and start walking home. If we don't, I shall fall asleep in this sun. It's really cooking me.
Come on then, everybody. Off we go. Wake up, Timmy.
And so they set off back to the caravan field. When they arrived back there, hot and tired, it was getting dark. They climbed over the stile and made their way slowly to the corner. Then they suddenly stopped and stared. They looked round and stared again. The two caravans had gone. The children were completely bewildered. How could two large caravans disappear into thin air? While they were wondering what to do next, Buffalo and the Snake Man and the India Rubber Man and the other fair folk came towards them. The India Rubber Man spoke first.
Your caravans are not stolen. I'll show you where they are. Come on, follow me.
Where are you taking us?
Your caravans are in the next field.
What's the idea of that?
I told you, us folks don't mix.
I don't want your dog worrying my snakes.
The last lot of children we met set all the Canary Man's birds loose, and they died. We fair folk don't want children near us anymore.
No, we don't trust them.
But we don't do things like that.
No kids allowed now. That's why we had horses tow your vans into this next field here. There they are. Nothing inside them has been disturbed. But you lot stop here. We're going back to our field. Come on, Buffalo. Come on, fair folk.
So that's that. The fair folk are punishing us for what those horrid other kids did.
I hate the idea of them not being friendly. We're not used to that.
Yes, it's a pity. I say, do you suppose the farmer who owns this field will mind us being here?
Oh dear. I'd never thought of that. We don't want angry farmers shouting at us tomorrow, do we?
No, it won't be much fun trying to live in a caravan surrounded by enemies.
Well, we'll sleep on it and see if we can find a way out of this problem tomorrow. Never say die.
That's one of your mottos, isn't it, Timmy?
And his other one is, let sleeping dogs lie.
Come on, everybody. Let's go to our bunks and see what happens in the morning.
And something did happen in the morning. A very angry red-faced farmer was waiting outside their caravans. He told them they had no right to be on his field, and if they didn't clear off straight away, they'd be in serious trouble. The only thing the famous five could do was go back to the fair people and ask them to lend them 2 horses and take the caravans back into the proper field. But their request was met with an angry murmur and a flat refusal to help. In fact, Buffalo became so angry with them that he cracked his whip and flipped 2 hairs from the top of Julian's head. The crowd laughed loudly, and Timmy bared his teeth and snarled. Things were just getting very unpleasant indeed when something very unexpected happened. A boyish figure came running up the grass hillside. Someone very like George, with short curly hair and a freckled face, but dressed in a grey skirt, not in jeans like George. The famous five looked with amazement.
Dick! Dick! Julian! Anne!
It's Jo, the traveller girl, who once got mixed up in an adventure with us. Julian, it's Jo!
George and Timmy!
I didn't know you were here. It's too good to be true.
Jo, where in the world have you come from?
I've got a school holiday, so I thought I would come and pay a visit to my uncle.
Well, I'm blessed. Who is your uncle?
Alfredo, the fire eater. Didn't you know? Oh, Dick, Julian, Anne, George, can I stay here with you while you're here? You haven't forgotten me, have you?
Of course not.
What's going on here now? Everyone looks so unfriendly. What's the matter with everybody? Uncle Alfredo, where are you? I don't know why you're all looking so angry, but these 4 are my very best friends. I'll tell you all about them and how nice they were to me. You see, it was like this. A few months ago, all of us were involved in an adventure.
It wasn't long before the fair people learned all about the famous five from Jo. And within the hour, their caravans were back in their proper place in the field. The famous five decided to go with Jo to celebrate with a few ice creams in the village. And as they set off, the fair folk called out to them in a friendly way, wished them good luck, and said how they hoped they'd stay in the field with them. After the surliness and sulkiness the children had got up until then, this came as a pleasant surprise. They had a happy day out, and on their return Mrs. Alfredo even presented them with a sponge cake. Then the famous five and Jo had a rather late tea and sat around outside their caravans watching the hundreds of jackdaws that flocked around the old castle walls. They'd been taking it in turns to look through George's field glasses. Dick was following the flight of one jackdaw that flew to a slit window near the top of the tower. It rested for half a second on the sill and suddenly flew off as if frightened. Then Dick saw something that made his heart jump.
Ju, take the glasses, will you? Train them on the window slit near the top of the only complete tower and tell me if you see what I see. Quick!
Yes, I can. What an extraordinary thing. It must be an effect of the light, I think.
What is it you can see?
Yes, what is it you can see?
Well, I saw a face. A face not far from the window. What did you see, Ju?
The same. It made me feel pretty peculiar. It was only there for a moment.
A face? What do you mean?
What sort of face?
What we just said. A face with eyes, nose and mouth.
But nobody lives in the castle. It's a ruin. Was it a visitor, perhaps?
No, the castle shuts at 5:30, and it's 6 now. It looked a sort of desperate face.
I thought so too. It's all very peculiar. There may be some ordinary explanation, but I can't help feeling there's something very odd about it.
Was it a man's face or a woman's?
A man's, I think. I couldn't see any hair against the darkness of the window. But did you notice the eyebrows, Ju?
Yes, I did. They were very pronounced, weren't they?
Eyebrows! The picture in the paper of the scientist Terry Kane showed he had thick black eyebrows. Don't you remember, Dick?
Yes, I do. I didn't recognise any likeness because it's such a long way away. It's only because your field glasses are so good, George, that we managed to spot a face at all.
I wish I'd seen the face. They're my glasses. I never saw anything.
I tell you what we might do. We'll go over to the castle tomorrow, go up to that tower, and then we'll certainly see if there was a face there.
Yes, we must find out something about it.
I honestly do feel awfully puzzled about it all.
At that moment, a big figure loomed up in the twilight. It was Joe's uncle, Alfredo the Fire Eater. He told them that Joe's aunt had invited them all to supper. This was too tempting for the children to resist, and they all went over to Alfredo's caravan. While they were waiting for supper, Alfredo gave them a fire-eating display. He lit 2 torches, leaned back, opened his great mouth wide, and put one of the flaming torches into his mouth and closed it. Only Jo watched unconcerned. She'd seen her uncle do it many times. Then Alfredo did the same with the other torch, and the children watched fascinated by the extraordinary scene. When he had finished, and they were asking him how he did it, and he was refusing to tell them, Anne suddenly had a shock. A long, thin body glided between her and Julian. It was one of the Snake Man's pythons which he'd brought with him. Jo caught hold of it and held it for dear life. The Snake Man smiled.
He likes you, Joe. Don't let him get his tail around you, as I've told you before.
I'll wear him round my neck like a scarf. He feels so nice and smooth. Oh, I do like snakes, I really do.
Then someone started playing the guitar in the distance, and Alfredo's wife gave them a lovely supper. So the famous 5 went to their bunks that night, tired and very content, with quite a lot of respect for Jo, who seemed to get on so well with pythons. Timmy slept well too, because he had had a whole plateful of chicken stew to himself for supper. The next morning, the children had breakfast and discussed the face at the castle window again. They decided they would go to the castle and see for themselves if anything unusual was happening there. They went up the path to the small tower, where a little door gave entrance to the castle. A funny old woman with no teeth and black beady eyes was there.
Yes? You want to go in the castle?
Yes, please.
You can't take that dog in. Dogs are not allowed. Not allowed.
Oh, can't we really? He won't do any harm.
Can't you read the sign there, eh? No dogs allowed in.
All right. We'll leave him outside then. Stay here, Timmy. We shan't be long.
I think we ought to get a guidebook too. Excuse me, is there a proper plan to the castle? I mean a plan of the dungeons or the towers as they were before they were ruined.
If you want to know anything like that, you'll have to go to the Society of Preservation, or whatever they call it. There it is, written over there on that sign.
I see it. The Society of Preservation of old buildings. Has anyone been here from them lately?
Yes. 2 men came from there and spent all last Thursday here. If you want to know anything about this place, you must ask them. I only take the money.
Come on, everybody. Let's go in. You wait here, Timmy.
Yes, come on. Later we can telephone the society and ask them if they can tell us more about the castle. There might be secret passages and things not shown in the guidebook.
So the famous 5 and Joe went into the castle grounds and walked around the big tower to see if it was climbable. But it was easy to see that it wasn't, and it would be much too dangerous to even try. But while they were looking up, they all had an enormous surprise, because Timmy came bounding to them across the castle grounds.
Timmy, wherever have you come from? There's no way in except through the turnstile, and the door behind is shut. How did you get in?
He's running over to those stones to try to show us. There's a small place between the fallen stones. I don't know how Timmy squeezed through. It doesn't look big enough for a rabbit.
What puzzles me is how he got in from the outside. The walls are 8 foot thick. There wouldn't be a hole right through the whole thickness. Oh dear. The old woman has seen Timmy.
How did that dog get in here?
We don't know how he got in. Is there a hole in the outer wall?
No, not one. You must have let that dog in while I wasn't looking. He's got to go out. And all of you, you've been here long enough.
Then the famous 5 and Joe left the castle and went to the village for some donuts and ice cream. While they were eating them, Julian went to the telephone box to phone the Society for Preservation of Old Buildings to ask them to put him in touch with the 2 fellows who examined the castle the previous week, because they must have been experts and would probably have had the complete plan of any secret passages, dungeons, or hidden rooms, if there were any. When Julian returned from the telephone, the children looked at him expectantly.
Any news?
Yes, peculiar news though. I found the address of the society and asked if they had any recent booklets about the castle, and if they would put me in touch with the 2 men from the society who went to Fay Knight's castle last week. And here's the peculiar bit. They said they didn't know what I was talking about. Nobody had been sent from the society, and who was I anyhow?
Then those men examined the castle for their own reasons.
I agree. I can't help thinking that that face in the window and those 2 men have something to do with one another. It's clear they had nothing to do with any official society, but gave it to us as an excuse because they wanted to find out what kind of hiding places the castle had.
Then there was a real face at the tower window, and there is a way of getting up there.
Yes, I know it sounds far-fetched, but there is just a possibility that those 2 scientists have gone there. I read in the paper that Geoffrey Pottersham has written a book on famous ruins. He would know all about Fay Knight's castle, and it would be a good place for him to hide until the hue and cry had died down.
You mean hide in the tower? Then quietly slip out one night. Go down to the sea, hire a fishing boat, and be across the channel in no time.
Yes, I'd worked that out. So I telephoned Uncle Quinton to tell him about it, but he was in London.
But Father hardly ever goes to London.
Apparently, he went about those 2 missing scientists. He's so certain that his friend Terry Kane isn't a traitor that he wants to tell the authorities.
Did you tell Mother our news?
Yes, Auntie Fanny said that she would tell it to Uncle Quinton when he gets back home.
They all set off back to the caravan field, where the fair folk were eager to make up for their unfriendly behaviour. Alfredo explained more about fire-eating. The rubber man twisted himself up like an octopus. Mr. Slither gave a talk about snakes. Buffalo gave another whip demonstration, and some other fair folk did tightrope walking and knife throwing. The children had a wonderful time. After tea, they sat on the hillside basking in the sun. George squinted through her field glasses all the time at the window slit in the castle. And just as the sun was going down, she too saw the face at the window, eyebrows and all, like Julian and Dick had said. So they all decided that after supper, they would put on some warm things and set off for the castle for a really exciting night. They waited till the moon went behind a cloud, then like moving shadows made their way to the castle as fast as they could. They did not want the fair folk to see them. They walked round the foot of the great thick castle walls. Timmy went with them, excited at the unexpected walk. He ran in front, sniffing. Then he suddenly stopped and looked back. He gave a little whine. The others hurried to him. Then, suddenly, he leapt about 4 feet up onto the uneven stones of the wall and disappeared. Julian flashed his torch and saw there was a block missing from the wall. He climbed up and came to the space where the block had been.
I say, this is interesting. The wall is hollow here, and Timmy's gone inside.
Shout to him, Julian. See where he is.
Timmy! Timmy! He's here. I tell you what, when this enormous wall was built, a space was left inside to make a secret passage. Shall we explore it?
Oh, yes.
Soon they were all bent double in a curious passage which ran along the centre of the wall. It was pitch dark, and although they all had torches except Joe, it was difficult to see. Anne hung on to Julian's jacket for dear life. She wasn't enjoying this very much, but she wouldn't have been left out of it for anything.
Stop, everybody!
What's up?
Steps here, going down very steeply, like a stone ladder. Be careful, everybody! Go down backwards, then we'll have handholds as well as footholds. Be careful, everyone. Here's another passage. I wonder where this one leads to. It's at right angles to the wall. We're going under a part of the courtyard, I reckon.
I'll bet we're not far from the big tower. Lead on, Julian.
Look, we're in a secret room. We're inside one of the walls of the castle itself. Perhaps an old bedroom.
And there's a pitcher with some water in it. And a dagger. Who hid here? And how long ago, I wonder?
Someone not very long ago. Look, there's some chocolate wrapping over there.
Well, this is surprising. Someone else knew this way in. Does it lead to the tower?
You better be careful. Whoever was here might be wandering about.
Never mind that. Let's go on. We can be very cautious.
Very well then, follow me up this spiral staircase.
We must be right at the top now.
They came to a narrow door. It had a great old-fashioned ring for a handle. Julian opened the door, and the famous five passed through one by one, and came out onto a gallery, which overlooked one of the rooms inside the tower. About 3/4 of the way round the gallery, a little flight of steps led downwards into the room below. But just beyond where the steps began, there was another door set in the wall.
There's a little door here. It's bolted from this side. Looks as if we're coming to the place. George, send Timmy up to me.
Come on, Timmy. Up with Julian. Go on.
I'll open the door as quietly as I can. Oh, more steps. I reckon the prisoner, whoever he is at the top. Come on, everybody. Quiet.
Timmy strained forward. Julian had his hand on the dog's collar. They all went up the stone stairway with hardly a sound. At the top was another door. It was not locked. Julian pushed it open and looked inside, his hand still on Timmy's collar. The moonlight struck through a narrow window and fell on the face of a sleeping man. Julian stared at it in rising excitement. Those eyebrows, yes, this was the face of the man who had appeared at the window. Julian switched on his torch, swept it round the room. There was no one else there. The man's arms were bound behind him, and his legs were tied together too. If this was Terry Kane, then his uncle must be right. The man was no traitor. He had been kidnapped and was a prisoner. Everyone was in the room now, staring at the sleeping man. Julian went over and shook the man's shoulder. He woke up at once and stared in amazement at Julian, who was standing in the full moonlight. He struggled up to a sitting position.
Who are you? How did you get here? And who are those over in the shadows there?
Listen, are you Mr. Terry Kane?
Yes, I am. Who are you?
We're staying opposite the castle, and we saw your face at the window through our field glasses, so we came to find you.
But how do you know who I am?
We read about you in the papers, saw your picture, and couldn't help noticing your eyebrows, sir.
Look here, can you undo me? I must escape. Tomorrow night my enemies are smuggling me out of here and across to the continent. They want me to tell them what I know about my latest experiments. I shan't, of course, but life won't be very pleasant for me.
I'll cut the ropes. I've got my penknife.
Oh, that's better.
How did you manage to get to the window?
Well, each evening one of the men brings me food and drink. He undoes my hand so I can feed myself. I drag myself over to the window so that I can have a breath of fresh air. I can't stay long because I'm too tied up again, of course. I can't imagine how anyone could see my face in this deep-set slit window.
It was our field glasses. It's a good thing that you did get to the window. We'd never have found you.
Julian, I can hear a noise.
Where?
Downstairs. Wait, I'll go and see.
Joe slipped out of the door, down the steep little stairs, and came to the door at the bottom that led into the gallery. She went through. Someone was coming. Along the gallery, too. Joe thought quickly. If she darted back up the stairs to warn the others, the newcomer could bolt the top door and they'd all be caught. She decided to crouch down on the floor beyond the door that led upwards. The footsteps came along the gallery and up to the door. The stranger found the door unbolted and stopped, stood perfectly still, listening. Joe didn't dare call out to warn the others. Then she heard Julian's voice calling quietly down the stairs.
Joe! Joe, where are you?
Julian came down. Behind him came Terry Kane and the others and Timmy to try to escape. The stranger slammed the door and ran the stout bolt home. The group on the stairs stopped in alarm.
Hey, Joe, is that you? Open the door.
The door's bolted. Who are you?
So you're back again, Pottersham. Open that door at once.
Who set you free? Who's that with you?
Listen, Pottersham, you must be out of your mind doping me and kidnapping me and telling me we were going to the continent on a fishing boat. And the rest of it. There are 4 children here who saw my face at the window and came to investigate.
Children? What? In the middle of the night? How did they get up to this tower? I'm the only one who knows the way in.
Pottersham, open the door!
You can go back to the tower, all of you. I'm going to get fresh orders. Those kids will be sorry they saw your face at the window, Terry Kane. I'll be back.
Unbolt the door, Joe, quick!
I can't. The key's gone. He must have locked it as well as bolted it and taken the key. How can I get you out?
You can't. Still, you're free, Joe. You can go and tell the police.
I haven't got a torch.
Oh, dear. You must wait till morning, Joe. You may lose yourself in the dark passages. You must wait till morning, Joe.
All right. I'll wait till morning. I'll curl up in the gallery here. It's quite warm.
It'll be very hard. We'll go back to the room upstairs. Call us if you want us.
Joe curled up on the gallery floor but couldn't sleep. She suddenly thought about the room where she'd seen the picture, the dagger and the chocolate paper. That would be a far better place to sleep because she could lie on the bench. She made her way cautiously to the door, felt for the iron ring, opened the door and holding out her hands on either side, touching the stone walls of the little stairway, she went down slowly, step by step. She came to the end of the spiral stairway at last, and remembered the straight passage that led to the secret room. She groped her way along, entered it, and then had a dreadful shock. A pair of strong arms went round her and held her fast. She screamed and struggled. The man switched on a torch and held it to her face. Jo suddenly put down her face and bit his hand. The man was furious. He took a rope from round his waist and proceeded to tie Jo up so thoroughly she could hardly move. Her hands were behind her back, her legs were tied, and she rolled about the floor, calling the man all the names she knew. Then he left her, and she heard his footsteps going off in the distance. Poor Jo was exhausted by her struggle. And then she remembered all the tricks that the rope man had taught her.
Work one knot free first, but first you won't know which knot is best. When you know that, you will always be able to free yourself in 2 minutes. Just find that one knot first.
Jo found the knot that bound her left wrist. It seemed a little looser than the others. She picked and pulled and loosened it a little more and managed to get her finger and thumb free. She remembered the rusty dagger and rolled on the floor till she felt the dagger under her and managed to pick it up with her free finger and thumb. For ages she moved it up and down until the rope on her wrists frayed and suddenly broke. It took Jo a long time. She couldn't manage to free her legs at first because her hands were trembling so much. But after another long rest, she undid the tight knots and shook her legs free. She went carefully down a flight of stone steps, came to the wide passage that ran under the courtyard, climbed the steps that led upwards again, and suddenly saw a little flash of sunlight. She stumbled along the castle wall and climbed back through the hole by which they'd entered. As sure-footed as a goat, she made her way to the caravan field and to Uncle Alfredo's caravan. When she got near it, she saw a man walking away. She ran up to the fair folk.
What's going on? Where are the others?
The man wanted to know all about you. He's really very angry indeed.
He must be the man called Pottersham who tied me up. He's come to find out how much we told you about the face at the window. Oh, Uncle Fredo, he's a bad man. I'll tell you all about him and where all the others are. You've got to rescue them. They're locked up in the castle.
You mean to say those kids are locked up in that tower over there? And the spy is with them?
Oh, he's not a spy. He's a good man. He's what they call a scientist.
The man who left just now said he was a scientist.
Well, he's a bad man. He's probably a spy. He kidnapped the good man up in the tower there to take him away to another country. He tied me up too. See my wrists and ankles.
We will rescue them straight away. I say, that scientist is coming back. He probably wants to ask some more questions.
Right, we'll get him.
The fair folk waited in silence for the man to come back. Then they walked round him menacingly. Within seconds, he had been neatly tied up by the rope man. Then, because he shouted so loudly, the snake man put him into an empty caravan with one of his pythons. The scientist stopped shouting at once and lay perfectly still, very frightened. The fair folk gathered together in Buffalo's caravan, planning the rescue of the famous five and the good scientist. When darkness came, a little company set out from the camp. They had told Jo not to come with them, and she had disappeared somewhere. Buffalo led the way, looking extremely fat because he was wrapped about with a great deal of peg rope, which is a rope with pegs thrust through the strands to act as footholds. He also carried his whip, though nobody quite knew why. Then came Mr. Slither, with one of his pythons draped round him. Then the rubber man with Mr. Alfredo. Behind them, like a little shadow, followed Jo. At the wall of the castle, the rubber man took one jump, flung himself on the top, rolled over, and disappeared. There was a low whistle. Buffalo unwound another thinner rope from his waist, tied a stone to it, and flung it over the wall to the rubber man waiting on the other side. He began to pull on the thin rope, and the peg rope, which was tied to it, went up the wall like a great thick caterpillar. The rubber man tied it fast to something, and then it was safe for all the others to climb up. Jo waited till the last man had gone and went up the rope too. She landed beside Buffalo on the other side of the wall. The 4 men stood in the moonlight looking up at the tower, talking in low tones, while the rubber man undid the thin rope and coiled it into loops. The peg rope was left on the wall. Jo heard a car going up the lane at the bottom of the castle hill. She heard it stop and reverse, and there was a low murmur of voices. She held her breath. Could it be that horrid man Pottersham and his friends come to fetch Mr. Terry Kane and all the children out of the tower? She ran up to the group of fair folk, but they were very cross that she had come.
Uncle Fredo, I can hear voices.
Will you stop this, Jo? You're behaving like a buzzing fly. You shouldn't be here.
But, Uncle, those men!
See here, Jo. If you want to be useful, you hold my python Beauty for me. He'll be in the way in a minute. Here you are.
He draped the great snake over her shoulders, and Beauty hissed loudly. Then Jo heard low voices again from the other side of the wall. She was frightened that the Pottersham men were going to follow the secret passages and go right up to the tower room before Buffalo and the others could carry out their rescue plan. She pictured the 4 children being dragged down the stairs, Terry Kane too. She dreaded to think how the men would deal with them. Suddenly, she made up her mind. She would follow the men through the passages and warn the others in the tower room. She ran to the wall, went up and over the peg rope to the other side, where the missing stone had left a gap in the old wall. She went through the hole with Beauty the python gliding after her, and they both went down the steps that led to the level passage under the courtyard. Beauty slithered down them, rather surprised at the sudden drop. Up the steps again they went, into the thick walls of the castle, and then into the secret room where the rusty dagger was still on the floor. Jo saw the door that opened onto the little gallery. Dare she open it? She did, slowly, and was soon in the little gallery. Beauty slithered up to her and coiled himself lovingly around her. And then she heard a noise and voices coming from the tower room. Surely one was Buffalo's. She was very surprised, but of course she didn't know what had been going on after she had disappeared with Beauty. Buffalo, an expert at knife-throwing, had thrown his knife, gleaming like silver, up at the window opening, where it fell to the floor of the tower room with a thud, causing great astonishment there. Everyone was half asleep. Timmy had barked like mad, and Terry Kane was worried that someone was throwing knives at them. But when the children saw that the knife was blunt and had a thin string attached to it, they realized it had something to do with Jo and the fair folk. So Julian had leaned as far out of the slit window as he dare and saw Buffalo and his friends down in the courtyard. They shouted to him to pull up the string because a peg rope was attached to it which they could use as a ladder to escape from the tower. So Julian took hold of the string and leaned back, pulling with all his strength. The rope slowly came into the room, and Terry Kane fastened it to a great iron ring embedded in the stone wall. When the rope was secured, they prepared to go down. And then, just as Julian was about to go first and test the rope, they stopped in their tracks. Someone was clattering up the stone steps that led to the tower. Someone was at the door. Who could it be? The door was flung open, and a man stood there panting. Behind him came 3 others. Terry Kane turned in alarm.
Pottersham, so you're back.
Oh, yes, I'm back all right, as I said I would be. If you let that dog go at me, I'll shoot him. I've got my gun here now, ready. Keep him off. Go on, keep him off.
Timmy, come back. Julian, help me hold him. He'll fling himself on that man, he's so angry. Timmy!
Back, Timmy. Quiet, Timmy. Shush, Timmy.
You can't behave like this, Pottersham.
Can't I? We've no time to lose. We're taking you and one of those kids with us as a hostage. We'll take this boy.
Get away from me!
Get him. Hold his arms and Terry Kane's.
What about the other kids, Pottersham? You can't leave them locked up here in this room.
Oh, yes, we can. We'll leave a note for the old turnstile woman and tell her they're up here. Let the police rescue them, if they can.
You always were a nasty piece of...
Take him down the steps. And the boy.
While all this was going on, Buffalo, down below the tower, had not been able to understand why no one had come down the peg rope. So he went up to find out if anything was wrong. When he arrived at the slit window, he had an enormous surprise and didn't like what he saw. The others were so occupied that they didn't notice him clamber into the room. Buffalo eyed the gun in Pottersham's hand.
Hey there! What's going on?
Buffalo!
Who in the world is this? How did you get here? Put that gun away. You ought to know better than to wave a thing like that about when there are kids around. Go on, put it away, and don't you dare point it at me like that.
Then the most amazing thing happened. Buffalo cracked his whip, and the gun disappeared from Pottersham's hand, flew up into the air, and was neatly caught by Buffalo. The gun had been flipped out of Pottersham's hand by the powerful whiplash, which had stung his fingers so much that he was bent double, nursing his injured hand. In their shock at seeing Buffalo, the men let go of Dick and Terry Kane, but Pottersham quickly saw a chance to escape and kicked the lantern, which went out, leaving the room in pitch darkness. Buffalo dare not fire in case he hit the wrong person. The door slammed shut and the bolt was shot home on the other side. There was a sound of hurried footsteps slipping and stumbling down the stone stairway into the dark.
We slipped up there, didn't we? They've gone.
Yes, but without us. They'd probably gone down the passages and will be outside before we've escaped. More's the pity. And as they bolted the door from the other side, we'll have to go down the tower wall using the peg rope ladder.
Come on then, quick, before anything else happens.
So one by one they carefully climbed down the ladder, although it wasn't very pleasant to look down at the courtyard far below. Eventually they were all down, including Timmy. The rubber man and Mr. Slither were waiting for them. But Mr. Slither was not very pleased with things.
My python, Beauty, is missing. If Jo has taken it back to camp, I'll pull her hair out. Where can it be? Beauty! Beauty! Jo, where's the snake? Where is Jo?
We haven't seen her.
No, only these 4 children were in the room with me. There's a tremendous upset in the tower, yelling and shouting. What's the matter with Pottersham and his gang, eh? We might be able to catch them if we go through the hole in the wall. Come on!
Now, while all the disturbance had been going on in the room upstairs, Jo had stayed in the gallery with Beauty draped round her neck. She tried in vain to make out what was going on in the tower room, but when she heard the door slam and the bolt shot home, she guessed it was the men she'd seen earlier and that they were escaping. So she pulled the snake off her shoulders and let it flow along the ground in one beautiful movement to meet the men just as they reached the gallery door. Jo sat hugging herself with laughter as she heard what happened.
Curse it! I've tripped over something. What is it? Shine your torch just here.
It's a snake! The biggest one I've ever seen! It's got you, Pottersham, it's got you!
Help! Help! It's squeezing my legs together in its coils! Help! Help!
I'm not touching it. I don't like snakes.
Pull it off! It's crushing my legs! Oh, where's the horrible thing gone now?
I don't know. Oh, it's down here. There must be 2 of them.
I'm not staying here with those things.
There must be hundreds of snakes in these passages. We'll have to go back up to the tower room. Come on, undo the bolt, quick!
Somehow the men got back up to the tower room and Jo slipped up the steps, slammed the door and bolted it. The only way the men could get out of the room now was down the rope, where Buffalo and the others would be waiting for them at the bottom. Very pleased with herself, Jo gathered up Beauty, wrapped him round her neck, and eventually found her way out through the passages where she joined the others. Mr. Slither was delighted to have his python back, and all the others were excited to hear what had happened, although Jo could hardly tell them about it for laughing. Then, leaving Alfredo and the rubber man guarding the peg rope, they all set off down the hillside, talking 19 to the dozen. Terry Kane went off to the police station, and the 5 children, and of course Timmy, began to think hungrily of something to eat. As they reached the field, Buffalo led them towards a caravan.
Let's find out if you know who the fellow is that we locked up in this caravan earlier on. He seems the only unexplained bit at the moment. Come on out, you. We want to know who you are.
What are you doing here?
Julian, go straight away and get the police here. I was set upon and locked up in this caravan for no reason at all.
Joe, why didn't you tell us he was George's father?
I didn't know he was. I've never seen him. I thought that he was...
I don't care what you thought. Fetch the police, Julian.
But Uncle Quentin, it's all a mistake. And anyway, Mr. Terry Kane has gone to the police himself.
Terry Kane? Well, where is he? Well, what happened? Has he been found?
Yes, it's rather a long story. It all began when we saw that face at the window. I told Aunt Fanny on the phone that we thought it might be Terry Kane.
Soon they were all telling the story of their adventures, while George's father listened in astonishment. And when Joe told how frightened the men were of the python, he understood, because he remembered how frightened he had been too when he'd been put in the caravan with the python. Then Mr. Terry Kane returned with 3 big policemen, and they set off to capture Pottersham and his friends. By the end of all the talking, the children were very tired, went to their caravans, and slept soundly till morning. The next day, George's father gathered the famous 5 around him.
This really is an extraordinary place. The most extraordinary people, too. Look, I'm going back home today, George. Would you all like to come with me?
Oh, no, Father. Of course not. We've only just settled in. None of us want to leave. Do we, Julian?
George is right, Uncle. We're just beginning to enjoy ourselves here. I think we're all agreed on that.
Oh, we are!
Very well. I'll go on and catch the bus down to the station. What message shall I give to your mother, George? She'll expect to hear something from the 5 of you.
Just tell her the 5 are having a wonderful time. Goodbye, Uncle Quentin. Goodbye. Goodbye, Uncle Quentin.
Please remember that circus tricks can be very dangerous, and you must never try to do them.